Imagine this for a second. You're standing outside, phone in your pocket, city noise all around you. You put on a pair of smart glasses and expect the usual routine, maybe a notification, maybe some audio prompts, maybe a small novelty moment. But something unexpected happens. You don't feel distracted. You don't feel overwhelmed. And more importantly, you don't feel the urge to pull your phone out at all. That's the moment where this comparison stops being about specs and starts becoming something much more personal. Because today, we're talking about RayNeo X3 Pro versus Meta Ray-Ban display. And there's one quiet feature that completely changes how these glasses fit into real life. You might think you already know what it is, but stay with me, because the truth only reveals itself once you actually live with both. When I first picked up these two pairs of glasses, I honestly expected the experience to be pretty similar. After all, they both sit on your face, both connect to your phone, both promise hands-free convenience. But from the very first minutes, the difference doesn't shout at you, it whispers. And that whisper follows you through your entire day. Let's start with how they feel the moment you put them on, because comfort is the first test no smart glasses can escape. The Meta Ray-Ban display immediately feels familiar. The design language is classic Ray-Ban. If you've ever worn regular glasses or sunglasses, your brain relaxes instantly. Nothing feels experimental. The frames sit comfortably, the weight feels balanced, and there's no learning curve in how you wear them. For a 10-year-old, it feels like normal glasses with a secret. For a 60-year-old, it feels reassuringly traditional. And that matters because comfort builds trust before any feature ever does. The RayNeo X3 Pro, on the other hand, feels different right away, but not in a bad way. The design clearly prioritizes function. You're aware you're wearing technology. There's a slightly more structured feel around the temples, and the frame subtly reminds you that something intelligent is happening here. It doesn't try to hide what it is. And oddly enough, that honesty becomes important later. At first, you notice the weight more than with the Ray-Ban, not uncomfortable, just noticeable. Your face registers it. Your brain asks a quiet question. Okay, what are you going to do for me? And that question lingers as you walk outside. Both glasses start doing what they're designed to do. The Meta Ray-Ban display stays discreet. Notifications come through as audio cues. Calls can be answered hands-free. If you've enabled it, the display information stays minimal and secondary. Most of the time you're listening rather than seeing. It's like having a helpful friend walking beside you, whispering updates without ever stepping in front of your view, and in busy environments, that's comforting. You still see the world exactly as it is. The RayNeo X3 Pro responds differently. Instead of whispering in your ear, it gently places information where your eyes already are. Not in a loud way, not in a flashy way, just there. A small, stable visual element that moves naturally with your head. And here's the key detail you don't fully appreciate at first. The information doesn't demand attention. It waits for it. This is where the story starts shifting, even if you don't realize it yet. I remember walking down a familiar street and intentionally trying not to test anything. No deliberate commands, no forced comparisons, just living. The Meta Ray-Ban display works best when you interact with it intentionally asking for something, triggering something, responding to audio cues. It's reactive, very good at it, but reactive. The RayNeo X3 Pro feels more ambient. It feels present even when you're not actively thinking about it. And that difference quietly builds tension between the two experiences. Audio is where things seem to balance out, at least at first glance. Both offer open-ear audio that lets you stay aware of your surroundings. No ear blocking, no isolation. Cars, conversations, footsteps, all of it stays present. For younger viewers, think of it like music playing softly from a speaker next to you instead of headphones. For older viewers, it means safety and awareness aren't compromised. On this front, neither device feels dramatically better than the other in normal conditions. Calls sound clear enough. Voice prompts are understandable. You can still hear the real world, but then you start stacking moments together. You get a notification. With the Meta Ray-Ban display, you hear it, you interpret it. You decide whether it matters. With the RayNeo X3 Pro, you see just enough context to decide instantly. No guessing, no mental translation. And suddenly, your phone stays in your pocket a little longer. At this point, You might be thinking, okay, that's nice, but is that really the feature that changes everything? Not yet, we're just setting the stage. Because comfort and audio are just the opening. Scene of this story, the real contrast starts to appear when movement enters the picture. Walking, turning corners, crossing streets. The Meta Ray-Ban display continues its steady audio-first approach. It feels consistent, predictable. You don't have to think about stability because you're not tracking visuals in space. That simplicity is its strength. Nothing ever feels disorienting. The RayNeo X3 Pro introduces a different relationship between your head, your eyes, and the information itself. Sensors like motion and orientation tracking work continuously to keep visuals stable as you move. When you turn your head, the information moves exactly as your brain expects it to. No swimming, no drifting, no fighting your senses. And here's the subtle magic. After a while, your brain stops separating the digital from the physical. It just accepts it. Not because it's flashy, but because it behaves correctly. This is where skepticism starts to crack. I catch myself realizing something important. I'm no longer thinking, how do these glasses work? I'm thinking, where am I going next? And that transition matters more than any comparison chart ever could. Because technology earns trust not when it impresses you, but when it disappears into your habits. Now, before we go deeper, there's something we need to pause on: cameras. Because this is where many people expect the biggest differences, and also where expectations can easily get distorted if we're not careful. The Meta Ray-Ban display includes an integrated camera, designed for quick capture, photos and short videos from a first-person perspective. No framing dance with your phone. No pulling a device out during a moment. It's straightforward. Press, capture, move on. The quality is practical. It's not meant to replace your phone camera, it's meant to catch moments you'd otherwise miss. And socially, this matters. People recognize the Ray-Ban form factor. Reactions range from curiosity to indifference, which keeps interactions relatively normal. RayNeo X3 Pro also allows capture, but the experience carries a slightly different social weight. The device looks more overtly technological, so awareness is higher. People notice it. That means responsibility matters more. You're more conscious of when and how you capture moments. The result is fewer impulsive recordings but more intentional ones. And whether that's a good or bad thing depends entirely on how you live your day. At this point, both glasses feel useful. Both feel competent. Both feel like they could fit into someone's routine. And yet, one of them is quietly reshaping how often you reach for your phone. While the other works best as an extension of it, we haven't reached the moment yet. But we're close, because once navigation, real-world awareness, and information layering come into play together, something unexpected happens. The comparison stops being about which glasses do more and starts being about which glasses ask less from you. When you finally sit down, the world slows. But the difference between the RayNeo X3 Pro and the Meta Ray-Ban display crystallizes. You start noticing what you don't notice when you're walking, moving, or interacting. The subtle ways each device has either earned your trust or demanded your attention. The RayNeo X3 Pro by now feels like an invisible companion. You didn't notice it prompting you too early. You didn't notice any misalignment. Your brain has stopped compensating. The device isn't just surviving your day, it's shaping how your day flows. Directions appear exactly when needed. Translations appear layered precisely over foreign signs. Notifications only appear when relevant. In essence, it has become part of your routine. And that is the quietest, most profound achievement a wearable can accomplish. Contrast that with the Meta Ray-Ban display. Its audio cues have guided you all day, reliably, efficiently. But you notice that your attention still occasionally flickers to your phone, not because the glasses failed, not because the software is bad, simply because the interaction flow invites verification. Audio is inherently ephemeral. You hear it, you trust it, but your brain still craves confirmation. And confirmation requires a glance at the source, your phone. The device has not failed you, yet it still requires a small cognitive investment. With RayNeo X3 Pro, that investment evaporates, the need to double-check disappears. Decisions are made silently, and your mind is free to focus on what's actually happening around you. Then comes the reflection phase. You lean back, hands resting on your knees, eyes scanning the environment absent-mindedly. You realize you are thinking differently about navigation, about information intake, about interruptions. RayNeo X3 Pro has been quietly restructuring your habits. Its quiet feature that displays low profile. Always dash available dash, but dash not dash and dash your face presence shifts the mental load. Each step, each glance, each cue has been absorbed without friction. The world has moved around you, and you've moved through it with fewer mental recalibrations. By contrast, the Meta Ray-Ban display has been more like a reliable guide on the side of the road, always available, always helpful, but occasionally reminding you that technology is present and active. That subtle difference accumulates over hours and across environments. And this is where you notice the nuance of translation again. On a street corner with a menu posted in another language, RayNeo X3 Pro overlays the text effortlessly. You read, understand, and move on without pulling your phone, opening an app, or breaking flow. The delay is brief, natural, and entirely manageable. You're aware of it only because your brain notices the mechanical sequence completing, not because it interrupts the moment. Meta Ray-Ban display requires slightly more interaction. The translation might rely on audio cues from the connected phone, requiring your focus to split between listening, processing, and occasionally confirming with the device. Both work, but one feels like augmentation of life, the other like assistance. Layered over it. As the afternoon stretches toward evening, environmental conditions change again. Light shifts. Shadows deepen, artificial street lighting flickers on. Movement patterns accelerate as people hurry home from work. You notice something profound. RayNeo X3 Pro remains consistent. The display stays legible. It doesn't jump. It doesn't wash out. Directions, translations, notifications, they maintain their clarity. Your trust has grown to the point where your brain doesn't second-guess it. You act first, glance later, if at all. That's a remarkable place for a device to reach where consistency becomes invisible. Meta Ray-Ban display, while also reliable, maintains its form as a dependable assistant rather than a nearly invisible extension. Its audio-driven approach ensures you never lose information, but your attention occasionally flickers toward verification. Both philosophies are valid. Both are grounded in usability. Both work, but they sculpt behavior differently. Comfort, too, remains central. Hours of wear accumulate awareness. RayNeo X3 Pro exerts a subtle pressure across the bridge of the nose, balanced carefully across the frame. It's never uncomfortable, but it's always present, an ever so slight reminder of the device's weight and presence. Meta Ray-Ban display feels familiar, almost like traditional eyewear. Neither approach is flawed. One emphasizes presence, the other minimizes it. Both achieve long-term wearability, but the way they shape perception is subtle, almost subconscious. You don't notice it at first, but after hours of immersion, the difference becomes evident. RayNeo X3 Pro is always gently prompting you to trust it, to rely on it. Meta Ray-Ban display is always quietly available, prompting you to consider it when needed. Battery life further influences user behavior. With RayNeo X3 Pro's visual display, navigation, and translation features, the device consumes energy faster. You find yourself becoming intentional with usage. Notifications are monitored and chosen. Directions are accessed only when necessary. Each interaction is deliberate. Meta Ray-Ban display, which relies primarily on audio cues, stretches usage. Predictably, there's less mental overhead to manage battery life because the device's energy consumption aligns naturally with interaction patterns. Neither is better in isolation. They just encourage different rhythms of use. And those rhythms influence daily habits more than any spec sheet ever could. By this stage, the devices aren't competing based on hardware specs anymore. They're competing on behavioral integration, how seamlessly they fold into life, how naturally they support action, and how invisibly they allow decision-making. RayNeo X3 Pro modifies your mental load, reduces cognitive friction, and subtly reshapes the way you interact with your environment. Meta Ray-Ban display reinforces familiar workflows, supporting decisions without intruding but requiring periodic verification. Both approaches solve real problems, yet each cultivates trust differently. And that realization sneaks up on you, gradually reshaping perception of value. Even social awareness becomes a factor. With RayNeo X3 Pro, the soft visual display doesn't interrupt your interaction with people. Faces remain visible. Eye contact stays natural. Friends don't notice the subtle green overlay unless you point it out. It's a quiet social invisibility that allows you to navigate public spaces without drawing attention. Meta Ray-Ban displays audio cues maintain a different kind of discretion. The device is mentally present, not visually. You could forget. It exists visually, but your mind remains intermittently engaged in decoding audio prompts. Again, neither is inherently superior. The difference lies in how each approach subtly shapes your social and cognitive experience. And then comes reflection. Sitting on a bench, finishing a day of commuting, errands, and casual interactions, you start noticing a deeper pattern. RayNeo X3 Pro has shifted your habits without requiring effort. Your reliance on your phone has decreased. Decisions about navigation, translation, and notifications happen almost reflexively. You glance, absorb, act. Meta Ray-Ban display has been a supportive companion, reliable and steady, but the habitual pull toward verification remains. The brain, accustomed to using audio cues, still wants occasional visual confirmation. That difference, tiny at first, accumulative over time, is profound. It's the quiet, almost invisible way trust builds and reshapes behavior. Finally, you realize the overarching lesson. The moment that truly defines a wearable is not the first use, or the impressive demo, or even the spec sheet. It's the quiet, repeated interactions that fade into habit. The moments where your technology disappears into life instead of life bending to technology. RayNeo X3 Pro and Meta Ray-Ban display are both capable devices. Both solve problems. Both are engineered with real-world challenges in mind. But their differences are subtle, human, and habit-forming. One emphasizes mental invisibility through visual cues. The other emphasizes social invisibility through audio cues. One reduces the cognitive load. The other preserves familiar patterns while guiding you efficiently. Both are correct. Both are useful. Both reshape your day in ways you only notice when you stop and reflect. And in that reflection, you come to understand the quiet truth. The better smart glasses in 2026 aren't about the most pixels, the loudest features, or the most spec-heavy sheet. They're about how seamlessly technology becomes part of life, how subtly it earns trust, and how quietly it disappears into your daily habits while still supporting you when it counts. One glance, one step, one thought at a time. And when that moment arrives, when you finally remove the glasses, it's almost disorienting. You expect relief. You expect your body to exhale the weight, your mind to feel lighter. Instead, there's a pause, a gap, and what hits you is absence. The quiet, subtle support the RayNeo X3 Pro provided doesn't scream for attention, it leaves a void. You suddenly notice how much it had been doing without ever intruding. The Meta Ray-Ban display, by contrast, fades back into the background almost immediately. Its audio-driven guidance is gone, and your habits quickly revert. You notice its presence less, and the brain returns to habitual checks and micro-decisions. With RayNeo X3 Pro, the absence is palpable. It shaped the day. It earned trust. And only now, removed, does that trust become tangible. That quiet realization is where the emotional connection forms. Most wearable tech attempts to impress with features. AR overlays, AI assistants, voice commands, gesture controls, they all aim to dazzle. But RayNeo X3 Pro's strength lies elsewhere, in the mundane, repeated, subtle support. In the hours spent moving through space, interacting with people, waiting, walking, or simply sitting, the device became an extension of thought, not a spectacle. It taught you a small lesson every few minutes. Technology works best when it stops demanding attention. Even the display's simplicity matters here. The monochrome green text that you barely notice during motion becomes a compass during stillness. You glance, absorb, and move on. You don't admire the interface. You don't get lost in effects or colors. You get clarity. Directions are simple. Translations are readable. Notifications arrive unobtrusively. That simplicity, repeated hundreds of times over a day, builds confidence. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's remarkably effective. And unlike many wearables that draw attention with each interaction, this one fades into life until you remove it. And only then does the absence feel heavy. Sitting also magnifies battery behavior in ways that walking cannot. RayNeo X3 Pro's visual display slowly drains more energy with prolonged visibility, prompting subconscious planning. When do I need it next? Should I leave notifications on? How much translation might be needed if I wander into a foreign street? Each decision, minor as it seems, begins shaping habits. You learn restraint. You learn timing. You learn that intention matters even in micro moments. The Meta Ray-Ban display, more audio-driven and energy-efficient, allows longer passive use. Without much thought. You can leave it on, relax, and still get guidance hours later. Each approach teaches a subtly different rhythm. One cultivates mindfulness, the other preserves ease. Neither is wrong. Both are lessons embedded in behavior, social perception. 2 becomes part of the reflection. RayNeo X3 Pro's unique appearance draws attention but not annoyance. People ask questions. Curiosity leads to conversations. The device becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. You find yourself thinking before triggering functions. Fewer accidental recordings, fewer awkward moments, fewer wasted interactions. Captures become meaningful, deliberate. Contrast that with Meta Ray-Ban display. Its familiar design earns passive trust. People barely notice, and you interact freely without explanation. Both approaches manage social friction, but in different ways. RayNeo X3 Pro guides conscious behavior. Meta Ray-Ban display allows unconscious integration. There's also an unspoken cognitive difference. As you sit, reflecting on the day, your brain unconsciously compares the experiences. RayNeo X3 Pro reduces decision fatigue. You didn't check the phone for translations. You didn't need to glance for notifications constantly. Your attention stayed outward, focused on the world rather than juggling devices. Meta Ray-Ban display, while less intrusive visually, required ongoing mental translation from audio cues to action. That's not failure, it's design. One device reduces cognitive load. The other leverages familiar patterns while staying unobtrusive. The nuance is in the user's brain. Subtle, accumulative, invisible to anyone watching, but transformative. In lived experience, and here's where the suspension builds. Sitting still might feel like downtime, but it exposes potential weaknesses. Will attention fade? Will fatigue make you notice weight or imbalance? Will screen clarity fail as light changes? Will audio cues become hard to follow as ambient noise rises? RayNeo X3 Pro handles these subtly, almost invisibly. Display remains clear under changing light. Balance remains steady. Notifications and translations behave consistently. Fatigue is present but manageable. Audio clarity matches expectations. Meta Ray-Ban display maintains consistency too, but the reliance on audio alone means your brain remains semi-engaged, filling gaps, verifying cues, interpreting prompts. Both are functional. Both survive the test. But one alters habitual perception more dramatically than the other. The small acts become profound. Glancing at a sign in another language, reading the translation instantly, understanding it without hesitation, these micro moments accumulate. RayNeo X3 Pro shapes micro decisions into a coherent, intuitive experience. You're constantly moving, constantly observing, but now with context seamlessly layered on reality. Meta Ray-Ban display supports this too, yet in a way that occasionally reminds you of the device's presence. Listen, process, confirm, act. Over a full day, those repeated small differences subtly change perception. They teach the user how to trust or when to remain cautious. Then there's the reflective pause, the moment you realize that the technology has influenced your physical behavior. RayNeo X3 Pro keeps your gaze elevated, encourages scanning the environment, maintains awareness without interruption. Micro-adjustments to head position, posture, and attention occur without conscious thought. You navigate crowded streets with less mental friction. Meta Ray-Ban display, while equally functional, keeps your attention more anchored to familiar processes. The distinction is not in capability. It's in behavioral integration, the quiet shaping of habits and attention. One subtly forms new habits, the other supports existing ones more passively. The final lesson emerges as the day wanes. When the glasses come off, a strange absence is felt, not discomfort, not relief, but a quiet pause where you notice that your brain had relied on these devices more than you realized. RayNeo X3 Pro leaves a tangible cognitive footprint, the awareness that your attention was guided, decisions simplified, tasks anticipated. Meta Ray-Ban display leaves a different footprint, familiarity, reliability, reassurance. Both are valid, but each shapes perception, trust, and daily rhythm differently. And understanding that distinction is the real takeaway. By now, it's clear that choosing between these devices isn't about specs, cameras, or displays alone. It's about how they integrate into life, how they shape habits, and how they earn trust subtly, moment by moment. RayNeo X3 Pro teaches anticipation, cognitive ease, and deliberate engagement. Meta Ray-Ban display teaches confidence, reliability, and low-friction guidance. One reshapes behavior quietly. The other preserves familiar interaction patterns while offering dependable assistance. Both succeed. Both fail. Both matter differently depending on your life, environment, and priorities. And finally, you reach the ultimate realization. The comparison is over, but the reflection continues. The glasses no longer feel like separate devices. They've merged. With daily rhythm, you walk, you sit, you wait, you interact. Each cue, each overlay, each prompt has been integrated into habitual flow. RayNeo X3 Pro subtly orchestrates attention and mental load. Meta Ray-Ban display reliably supplements experience without altering habits dramatically. Neither is inherently better, but each has demonstrated its purpose to support life seamlessly, unobtrusively, and in real time. At that moment, when the glasses are removed, the difference crystallizes not in specs, not in cameras, not in audio clarity, but in how your day felt with them on versus how your day continues without them. That is the ultimate test of wearable technology in 2026. Not features, not demos, not marketing claims. Real, lived experience, quietly shaping trust, attention, and behavior. And once you notice that, everything else falls into perspective. What these devices do isn't just technical. It's behavioral, social, and psychological. It's the difference between feeling assisted and feeling oriented. Between reacting to technology and living through it seamlessly. Between needing to check constantly and simply knowing. And that subtle distinction is the reason these comparisons matter so deeply. I keep walking, but now my pace has slowed almost imperceptibly. The streets are quieter. Shops display their neon signs, some flickering, some steady. I notice sounds I didn't pay attention to before: a distant horn, the whisper of leaves in a breeze, footsteps approaching from behind. At this stage in the day, wearable tech can feel intrusive. Every beep, every visual cue, every vibration can wear on your patience, but neither device reacts dramatically. They both understand, in their own way, that today isn't about novelty. It's about endurance. The Meta Ray-Ban display continues its polite, consistent behavior. The audio cues are soft, almost apologetic. Notifications arrive only when they matter. Navigation guidance appears as needed and then fades. Nothing nags, nothing distracts. It's polite technology, almost deferential, as though it knows that, by now, the user has already earned its place in daily life. Yet despite that refinement, I notice an instinct returning, reaching for my phone. Not compulsively, but casually. A micro-habit I've carried for years. The Meta Ray-Ban display can assist. It can notify. It can guide, but it doesn't remove the reflex entirely. And there's a subtle lesson in that. Technology can help. But unless it changes habitual behavior, its effect is mostly functional. It improves efficiency, but it doesn't transform experience. In this case, the Meta Ray-Ban display respects habits, reinforcing them instead of reshaping them. That is its charm, and also its limitation. Switching to the RayNeo X3 Pro, the difference doesn't scream. There's no flashy alert, no intrusive overlay, no sudden chime demanding attention. It quietly continues its work. Directions appear in my field of view when needed. Contextual prompts show up briefly, then vanish. The information cooperates with the environment rather than competing with it. I don't feel guided. I feel aware. And that awareness, subtle though it may be, is transformative. It changes how I move, how I process, how I interact, not in an obvious, showy way, but in a pattern that becomes second nature over hours of use. Stopping at a familiar corner, one that normally requires double-checking street signs, I notice something remarkable. Without thinking, I move. No mental checklist. No verification glance. My brain has internalized the guidance. The display was there when I needed it. It faded when I didn't. I'm not conscious of trust being built, but it is. The RayNeo X3 Pro doesn't demand trust. It earns it incrementally. That incremental trust is the feature that won't appear on spec sheets but will shape the entire user experience. Ambient light shifts as the sun dips lower. Shadows stretch across buildings and the streets grow unevenly lit. Many displays falter here. They wash out or become visually noisy. Not the RayNeo X3 Pro. The single monochrome green display maintains readability. Text remains crisp. Directions are easy to parse. It's not about visual fireworks or cinematic flair. It's about clarity, legibility, and calm. I glance at notifications, receive subtle prompts, and never feel pulled from reality. It respects both my eyes and my attention. Audio remains balanced with the surrounding environment. Open-ear speakers provide navigation cues and translate it. Text without drowning out ambient sounds. Footsteps of other pedestrians, distant chatter, passing cars, a bird's wings flapping, all of it coexists with the subtle whisper of guidance. The glasses do not isolate me. They layer information over reality rather than replace it. That integration is why I begin to notice mental energy savings. Less interpretation, less decision-making, less mental friction. Each small efficiency compounds over the day. Fatigue is present, but manageable. The weight on my nose, the subtle tension behind the ears, these are gentle reminders that this is a physical device, not a magic trick. But unlike other wearables, the discomfort never becomes sharp or demanding. It's a persistent awareness that strangely reinforces trust. I don't rush to remove the glasses. Instead, I observe, continue walking, and engage with the world. That balance between presence and absence. The subtle tension is where the RayNeo X3 Pro shines. It's not weightless. It's intentional. The Meta Ray-Ban display feels different. Its lighter, familiar frame allows prolonged use without drawing attention to weight or form. You barely notice it's there, almost a non-entity in terms of physicality. Audio cues are the primary driver for interaction. Navigation, notifications, translations, they all depend on sound rather than sight. It's efficient, predictable, unobtrusive, but in contrast to the RayNeo X3 Pro, it doesn't shape habits. It supports them. It doesn't anticipate. It responds. The distinction is subtle but impactful. One device actively reshapes user attention. The other complements existing patterns. Both succeed, but the emotional and cognitive outcomes differ. A corner coffee shop appears. I step inside, slowing to a walk. Ambient noise rises, espresso machines, chatter, clinking cups. Crowded spaces are the crucible for testing wearable tech. The RayNeo X3 Pro maintains visual clarity, while open-ear audio continues to deliver. Prompts without forcing me to raise my voice or lean toward my phone. Directions, translations, notifications, they all integrate seamlessly. Nothing fights the environment. Nothing distracts. Each cue is a whisper, a gentle nudge, a reminder that the device exists to support, not dominate. It's almost meditative. You walk, you see, you hear, you process, and all without cognitive strain. The Meta Ray-Ban display performs reliably in this environment too. Audio cues remain clear, though louder ambient noise requires slightly more focus. Users may need to consciously listen. The visual absence of display overlays means all guidance is auditory. It's functional, safe, predictable, and socially discreet. But the cognitive rhythm differs. You're constantly interpreting auditory information, integrating it into real-world movement. The RayNeo X3 Pro offloads that integration, reducing mental work. Over hours, that difference becomes apparent, not as a moment of drama, but as a subtle, pervasive shift in effort and attention. Battery awareness creeps in naturally. With the RayNeo X3 Pro, visual overlays, translations, and active prompts consume power steadily. You begin to subconsciously ration interactions, plan usage, and choose moments deliberately. There's a growing mindfulness about energy allocation. It's subtle but instructive. The Meta Ray-Ban display, relying mainly on audio, drains more slowly. You can leave guidance running almost continuously without concern. Both approaches influence daily behavior. teaching different forms of intentionality. One guides attention and energy. The other preserves it. Then comes reflection, a quiet moment at the edge of the cafe window. Watching the street, absorbing. People, motion, light, sound. I notice micro behaviors forming without conscious effort. With RayNeo X3 Pro, my head tilts slightly differently, scanning spaces more efficiently. My attention is more outward focused. I notice crosswalk signage, pedestrian flow. Directions and prompts appear only when necessary. With Meta Ray-Ban display, I remain anchored in a semi-passive rhythm. Audio provides guidance. My eyes wander less. I check my phone occasionally, not out of failure, but habit. Both experiences succeed, yet one quietly shapes behavior, and the other maintains familiar routines. And here comes the critical, final observation. The day ends. The street's quiet. Foot traffic thins. Shadows lengthen, and I take the glasses off. The RayNeo X3 Pro leaves a pronounced absence. You immediately notice how often your attention was guided without conscious thought. How many micro decisions it quietly influenced. How effortless navigation, interaction, and awareness became. The absence is almost tactile, a gentle void. The Meta Ray-Ban display's removal feels lighter expected. Functional, reliable, but it leaves little trace in terms of cognitive footprint. The difference isn't in performance. It's in mental integration, habit formation, and attention management. Now, the verdict crystallizes. The Meta Ray-Ban display excels for those who want smart functionality that blends invisibly into existing life patterns. It's familiar, socially discreet, and dependable. Notifications, audio prompts, and navigation arrive when needed. It supports life without altering behavior. The RayNeo X3 Pro, by contrast, subtly reshapes attention, reduces cognitive load, orchestrates habit formation, and gently guides user interaction. It doesn't announce its value. It earns it in moments of calm and chaos alike. That difference isn't measurable in megapixels, battery ratings, or display brightness, but it's tangible in daily experience. And finally, you realize the truth. The impact of wearable technology in 2026 isn't in specs. It's in how it becomes part of your rhythm, your awareness, and your trust. How it quietly scaffolds decisions, reduces friction, and integrates with life seamlessly. How you walk, sit, wait, interact, and move with or without the device, and how the absence makes you notice its presence in a new way. That's when the comparison stops being about glasses and starts being about experience, about human behavior, about technology that truly earns a place in your day. As night settles in, I take a slow walk back home, reflecting on the day with both devices resting lightly on my nose at different times. I realize that what started as a straightforward tech comparison has transformed into something much more subtle, an exploration of how wearable technology can influence behavior, attention, and trust without screaming for your focus. And it's funny, isn't it? How we assume tech should yell for attention, should be flashy, should force us to notice it. But sometimes, the quietest things leave the biggest impact. The RayNeo X3 Pro and the Meta Ray-Ban display have both been silent companions, but their approaches couldn't be more different. The Meta Ray-Ban quietly integrates, blending into your routine. Notifications appear unobtrusively. Audio prompts are restrained. You almost forget it's there, and that's the appeal for people who want minimal interference. Social perception is neutral, privacy is intact, and the experience feels safe and predictable. You rely on it, but only in familiar ways. And that's the subtle art of design at work. The frames don't scream technology here, they whisper it. But then, isn't that sometimes what we want? Comfort, invisibility, and predictability. Then there's the RayNeo X3 Pro, which is less about blending in and more about active guidance. The information appears right when needed and fades when it's not, creating an almost subconscious awareness. Directions, translations, subtle notifications, they become part of your rhythm rather than your attention. You don't think about interacting with it. You think through it, and that one quiet feature, timing, is what changes everything. It's not flashy, it's not disruptive, but it fundamentally reshapes how you navigate a busy street, converse in a foreign language, or remember a fleeting moment. Imagine walking through a crowded plaza in a city you've never visited. Most devices would demand your attention. Pull your eyes down to a screen. The X3 Pro doesn't. It whispers guidance. It subtly informs. And your brain suddenly notices what it has been missing. Space, movement, context. I notice small, profound shifts as I move through the evening streets. My steps feel more confident. My head stays up instead of bowed over a screen. I observe more. Buildings, signs, faces, tiny details that normally blur into the background are suddenly noticeable. A small cafe with warm lighting, the subtle flicker of a neon sign, someone's hurried glance across the street. These moments are contextualized now. The glasses aren't commanding my attention, they're amplifying it. And isn't that exactly what wearable tech should do? They shouldn't distract, they should enhance. And the more I live in this augmented reality, the more I realize the difference between real utility and just cool tech lies in trust. Trust doesn't arrive through loud marketing or bold claims. It arrives quietly, one carefully timed display at a time, and when it does, it shapes behavior. I notice it in how I pause, how I make decisions without hesitation. Crosswalks feel safer. Conversations feel less strained. Even small daily habits, the way I check for street signs, glance at my route, interact with strangers start to feel more intentional. And that's something neither spec sheet nor marketing video can show you. You have to live it. Finally, I set both devices down at home. The Meta Ray-Ban feels familiar and comfortable, like a reliable friend who shows up when called. Its strength is predictability. You can rely on it without thinking twice. The RayNeo X3 Pro feels like a mentor guiding me gently, teaching me to rely less on my phone and more on awareness, to interact more intentionally. And here's the crucial difference. One is reactive, the other proactive in subtle ways. Neither is perfect, and neither is universally better. They serve different philosophies and different users. But one thing is clear. The RayNeo X3 Pro has earned a level of trust I didn't anticipate. And that subtle, invisible feature, the timing of information, is the reason it quietly changes the way I move through my world. I remember the first time I used the RayNeo X3 Pro's camera in a casual setting. Not for a cinematic capture, not for content creation, just for memory. A friend laughed at a joke mid-conversation. I lifted my hand slightly, captured the moment without pause. No awkward framing, no phone lifting, nothing forced. The photo isn't magazine quality. It's honest, practical, and exactly what it needs to be. A preserved memory. And the subtlety of it all is disarming. People barely notice, and yet you gain this quiet superpower, the ability to capture life without disrupting it. Audio continues to play a fascinating role. I notice it in layered ways. Voice prompts are clear, but never isolating. Navigation instructions whisper in my ear without cutting me off from the ambient sounds around me. The honk of a distant car, footsteps passing by, the murmur of conversation. They all exist naturally alongside the digital overlay. I realize that sound is as important as vision in building trust. If a device demands attention too loudly, it's intrusive. If it whispers too quietly, you miss critical cues. The RayNeo X3 Pro strikes the balance. It's not gimmicky. It's human. Even the translation feature demonstrates subtle genius. I approach a store with a foreign sign. Without pausing my movement, text overlays appear naturally. I glance at it. I understand. The system doesn't shout. It doesn't dominate. It quietly augments comprehension. I strike up a conversation with a barista. Line-by-line subtitles appear. There's a slight, understandable delay. It isn't perfect. It isn't magic. But the effect is undeniable. Confidence, clarity, reduced hesitation. You're present in the moment while being guided. And that guidance is invisible until you notice how much smoother life becomes. Battery life, the ever-present question for wearables, doesn't dominate. Heavy tasks, navigation, translation, continuous audio consume more, of course. But intermittent, mindful usage stretches performance. Kids pick up usage patterns instinctively. Adults quickly appreciate the predictability and the subtle management of expectations. And here's the irony. The battery's limitations force intentionality, turning a potential weakness into an educational, almost meditative benefit. By the time evening deepens, the contrast between RayNeo X3 Pro and Meta Ray-Ban display crystallizes. Further, Meta Ray-Ban hides in plain sight. Its strength is discretion. The RayNeo X3 Pro enhances awareness. Notifications, audio cues, navigation, translations, they are seamlessly integrated into the world. One device supports, the other blends. Which is better? It depends on the user. But what becomes fascinating is how small, quiet differences like the timing of information alter your behavior profoundly. It's subtle, invisible, but transformational. Walking past a bustling street market, I see the subtle ways timing matters. A notification appears just as I approach a corner. A translation overlays a sign while I'm reading it naturally. Directions update in real time without distraction. And suddenly, I understand, this is the invisible feature that changes everything. Not the camera, not the audio, not even the display brightness, it's timing. It teaches awareness. It encourages focus without forcing it. It earns trust silently. The night winds down, and I set the glasses aside. The Meta Ray-Ban feels like a reliable companion, predictable, safe, unassuming. The RayNeo X3 Pro feels like a partner in thought, quietly shaping the way I interact with the environment, prompting awareness without intrusion. That trust, that subtle calibration, is more valuable than any flashy spec. And as I sit back and reflect, I understand. The story of smart glasses isn't in how loud they shout. It's in how quietly, thoughtfully, they change the way you live. And that's the moment I didn't trust them. Until I experienced the invisible hand guiding my day.